Welcome everyone to this another series that we have started, and so far what we had covered in the previous series of unlearning the falsehoods, it was largely about um, things that went on or things that were done in the contemporary era, meaning for which there is some concrete documented evidence that exists. All right. But the era now that we are starting to discuss, or we will start to discuss in this new series, it's rather an old series. I started this very early on when I started this YouTube channel, but I could not sustain it long enough because due to variety of reasons, but that is not a concern anymore. Now we will again restart that series, and the book, or rather a set of books that will focus on this series, is written by R.C. Majumdar. Okay, now this is the first edition in that book. um, the title of this book is The History and Culture of Bharat, the Vedic Age. All right, as the name suggests, this book talks about the time that is as old as time itself. All right, because prior to that, we have no evidence of anything existing. And let's get straight into it. Okay, R.C. Majumdar is a highly recommended author for people who want to study the history of Bharat through the perspective and the lens of Bharat herself. All right, the reason being, majority of the history that was written, and I would also like to clear this misconception into the heads of people that largely the history is what it is taught in the NCERT textbooks. No, you know that's rather a surface level, and on top of that, it is a false narrative that was you know written to suit a certain political narrative. Okay, but when you dig deeper, for me that moment came when I was preparing for civil services and I was exposed to a variety of sources of history, and that is when I realized and discovered that, oh, history is not what it seems. All right, so again, we are going to start in this book. We are going to start from chapter 8 onwards. The title of the chapter is Race Movements and Prehistoric Culture. Okay, now this idea, this notion in the Western world that uh, you know and R.C. Majumdar also concurs to this thought, and this is where again my profound disagreement with R.C. Majumdar lies. Is he, along with the British and the Western world, believes that there are no original inhabitants of this land. Nobody lived on this land, and all that we see today is people have come from outside. Okay, let me tell you the origin of this story. The Catholics, or rather the monotheistic people who you know went about exploring different lands. One such land was America, that is today like to call as United States. Now, when they went over there, they came across indigenous people. All right, so it is very much inside their head that wherever the land where they go, okay, there was no culture that already existed before them, before their arrival, and hence only it is only after their arrival that civilization dawned upon that particular land. And the history of Bharat has been no different. That is what they think. Okay, now I would not blame R.C. Majumdar for buying into this narrative, because there are multiple factors at work over here. Right, up until 1992, there was very little known about Harappa and Mohenjo-daro. Why? Because there were no excavations that were undertaken. All right, we had a lot of other things to deal with. We had to deal with the Christian missionaries, we had to deal with the Islamic conversions, we had to deal with the British repressions, we had to deal with taking over of English as medium of education from Sanskrit and all the vernacular languages. So all these simultaneous struggles were going on, and it is in 1922 when the British, the white person, um, realized that, oh, this part of the world seems to be pretty old than we thought of, because they discovered some artifacts in Harappa and Mohenjo-daro. All right, now here is where lies the trick. Do you really believe that the British were intellectually honest when it came to interpretations of the excavations that were taken up in Mohenjo-daro and Harappa? Okay, the entire edifice, the entire idea of British Empire lies in the idea of racial superiority. Now they had come up with some evidence going back 2000, 3000 years, okay, far before even their great 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 grandfathers, forefathers were shitting on streets. Okay, and they came across evidences that there were well structured drainage systems, and on top of that there are very few natives who are very well versed in English, so they could comprehend the material and the literature that the English people were writing about these excavations. Okay, so what it did was they layered up these things with lies and fabricated evidence. Oh, this is this, it cannot be older than this, and hence it is very similar to what we have experienced in our part of the world, that is Europe. Okay, so I would very much urge you and encourage you to do your own due diligence, because we cannot assume that British were intellectually honest when it comes to analyzing, academic analyzing, and scholarly analyzing of the artifacts that were excavated at um, Mohenjo-daro and Harappa. So every story that our history textbook contains is based on the research papers that were published by the white people. So their intellectual integrity cannot be trusted, because the entire idea of British Raj was held on this idea that they were a superior race. So they cannot let it out in the open that, oh, you are a superior race to us, but right now we are superior race. All right. So yes, we'll start with chapter number 8, that focuses on race movements and prehistoric culture. All right, the Westerners have always been under the assumption that since how did they justify the culture of Bharat to be superior? Okay, it's basic human nature. When you see something that is superior to your culture, you have two options. Either you concede that yes, the culture that you have discovered is superior, which was clearly out of the question because they were now the ruling elites in Bharat, or the second option is you claim some sort of a contribution to the flourishing of that culture. That is what British did. Okay, we are taught in schools that the original inhabitants of this land came from outside somewhere. People who inhabited the Harappa and Mohenjo-daro cultures, they came from outside. They were not indigenous inhabitants. This is again an assumption. There is no conclusive evidence to prove this. Okay, there are many scientists who have already disproved the Aryan invasion theory, but I know there are some people out there who still buy into this theory. Okay, so yes, that is that they took the second approach because they wanted some sort of a contribution. It shook their core. Okay, how can there be a civilization that is far advanced than us, okay, that has no contribution from the West? And hence they came up with this false narrative of race migration, that there were people from Nordic countries today, like that we like to call as Norway, Sweden and Finland. Some people from over there came over here and established the Aryan culture. All right, so yes, so let's see. All right, now again it is written on page number 144 of this chapter of this book, in chapter 8, that no kind of man originated on the soil of India. All her human inhabitants have arrived originally from other lands, but developing within India some of their salient characteristics and then passing on outside India. Okay, so you understand the absurdity of this argument. Okay, now I'm not blaming R.C. Majumdar to buy into this argument, because he himself was a scholar in those times where you had to you had no option. Okay, the printing press, the scholarship, everything was done in English, and it was dominated by the English elite. Hence he had to abide by these things to get his books published. But here is what his conclusion is, that no kind of man originated in the soil of India. So nobody originated here. People from outside came over here, developed their culture, and then again went outside and spread it. This is the underlying idea, to deny us the original nationhood that we rightly deserve, that nobody existed on this land. People came from outside, developed their culture over here, and then went outside again to spread it. Okay, do you see how ridiculous this argument is? Okay, so there are eight sorts of people that R.C. Majumdar mentions in chapter number 8. Number 1 is Negritos. Okay, as the name suggests, people from Africa, the oldest people to have come to India. That is what it is assumed. Okay, we have no conclusive evidence, but these are all based on assumptions. Like in mathematics, you have to, you know, start with an assumption in order to arrive at a conclusion. Okay, so we are starting off with this assumption. R.C. Majumdar is starting off with this assumption that Negritos, people from Africa, were the ones who came over here. Then there were Australoids, meaning people from the Mediterranean region, meaning the northern African region and the southern European region. So people from the Mediterranean region also came over here. People from Africa, they also came over here. Early Mediterranean, okay, who brought earlier forms of ostrich speech. Then the civilized and advanced Mediterraneans, okay. So earlier Mediterraneans weren't exactly civilized. So the later Mediterraneans who came over here, who later became as Dravidians according to the West, okay. So that narrative itself is a lie, that there is an Aryan Dravidian divide in Bharat. There is no such thing. Aryan Dravidian. Dravid was a word that was used to indicate direction and geography, not a race of people. All right. So that itself is a lie. On top of that lie, there is another lie that says that the people from the Mediterranean region came over here and civilized this, and those people became Dravidians. Okay. Then next were the Armenoids. Okay, standard alpine stock. Next were the Alpines, people who settled in the regions of Gujarat and Bengal, early Vedic Aryans. And the seventh were the Vedic Aryans, okay, who brought Vedic Aryan speech. So this itself strips us from the ownership of Sanskrit as a language. Okay, it is being said that the Vedic Aryans who brought Sanskrit with them, they were from outside. And then last were the Mongoloids. So it is the combination of all these 8 races that came. Nobody lived over here. Okay, it was only forests and animals, apparently. Okay, according to the West, nobody lived over here. All these people came from outside, colonized this land and geography that we like to call as Bharat, and hence we are the descendants of either of these races. All right, so you can see how or where exactly is how the Westerners are informed about Bharat. All right, let's see. Okay, on page number 145, R.C. Majumdar writes, a branch of proto-Australoids based on to Australia is very ancient times, blah blah blah. All these things are not needed. This is very important, where I want you to focus your attention. On the same page, he writes, the civilized pre-Aryan Dravidian people of northern India, which became Aryanized in language and contributed largely to the evolution of the Hindu people and culture of North India. Okay, so here is saying the Mediterranean people. Okay, now again it is based on another lie. First lie is that the Aryans came over here. The second lie is that before the Aryans came over here, people from the Mediterranean region came over here, settled, okay, and it is with them that the Aryans and the Dravidians, they intermingled. Okay, so lies upon lies. So it is this was the one that contributed immensely to our culture as we see today. Next up is who exactly were the original Aryans? Okay, according to the West, and that sentiment is reflected in the book of R.C. Majumdar, that is Nordic Aryan-speaking group of Bharat, who gave to Bharat its Aryan speech, and by their organization, imagination and adaptability helped to bring about a great cultural synthesis, leading to the foundation of the Hindu civilization of India. So let me give you a little information about geography. Which are the Nordic countries? Okay, The countries that are in the extreme north, that are the Norway, Sweden, Finland, and all those countries are known as Nordic countries. So it is said, and it is assumed, and it is falsely believed by people in the West that those were the real Aryans, those were the Nordic Aryans. Okay, they were the ones who were the progenitors of the Sanskrit language, came over here up until, from Norway, Sweden, Finland, all that land came up until the area that we today call Pakistan, just to give us Sanskrit language, and went back again to spread it to other parts of the world. All right. And it was them, okay, the rich culture in which we take a lot of pride, because I don't think there is any nation on this earth apart from, the Asian nations where there is some real original culture left. All that America has is a mixture of European cultures and made up things such as, Halloween and whatnot. Even the Christmas festival that they celebrate is some sort of a perversion of the pagan traditions. Okay. So yes, this is what they think. And this is what we were made to believe. Okay. Furthermore, R.C. Majumdar writes, the true Aryans of ancient times, but owing to the miscegenation and climatic condition, the complexion of the body and the color of hair and eye have been modified or eliminated by natural selection to light brown or brown, or to black or black for the hair and the eyes. Okay. Now the biological justification given for this lie is, okay, you see that people belonging to these Nordic countries, they have blue eyes, they are tall, they have, blonde hair, and symmetrical bodies, symmetrical shapes. Okay. Now, if indeed they were the ones who came over here, why exactly is the complexion, the build, the physique of the present day inhabitants of Bharat is different from them? So it is, um, it is explained, or the justification that is given for that is they are eliminated by natural selection to light brown and brown. So there is a phenomenon of natural selection in biology, that a biological trait, okay, one biological trait is naturally selected over other based on the circumstances and exposure to nature. Okay, so they are saying all these things were eliminated by natural selection. Okay, so they have been completely eliminated. So if you believe this theory to be true. Okay, let's move ahead in the chapter. R.C. Majumdar again writes that the Negritos, okay, the Negroes from the Africa, they were the ones, they also came over here, according to this book. Their settlement in the Andamans shows a certain advance in culture, as they must have crossed the sea in their small dugouts, which testifies to their skill as well as courage and imagination, and they came to be acquainted with a bow and arrow. So again, I would go out on a tangent and ask a few different questions on this. They are saying that what is the material evidence for the Negroes to have come to Bharat? Okay, and I'm not talking about the contemporary Negroes that we like to call as Siddhis. Okay, there is a Siddhi community in Bharat who come from African lineages, who had been settled over here as laborers by the Islamic rulers. Okay, not them, but this we are talking about the prehistory, the antiquity. Now, how did the Negritos travel over here? It is said, okay, that the mere fact that these tribes to this very day exist in Andamans, it testifies to the fact that they were good navigators. So again, this is an appeal to your reason. If indeed they were such good navigators, why did not they go on further? Because okay, there are some first principles of human nature. Humans by nature are inquisitive. Humans, and when I say humans, I say men. Okay, men by nature are inquisitive. Men by nature want to explore further. We have a certain affinity to risk. Okay, we want the forbidden fruit. All right. So if indeed they were so good navigators, why did not they use their boats and travel further to Thailand, Indonesia, and all those further islands up until Australia even. So again, these are the questions that I'm asking. I'm no history researcher, I'm no history scholar. I'm simply just a commoner raising these questions and poking holes in the theories of lies that were taught to us. Okay? So, owing to their very primitive states, the Negritos did not appear to have contributed anything of importance to the civilization of Bharat. So, R.C. Majumdar writes on page number 149 that owing to their very primitive state, the Negritos did not appear to have contributed anything of importance. Apparently, the Negroes from Africa have nothing to contribute, according to this book. Okay. Situated as they were, the Negritos were not in a position to influence the languages which came to India subsequently. At least two other linguistic strata covered up Negrito speech, the Austric and the Dravidian, before the Aryan language arrived. Okay, so apparently there was a Dravidian speech that originated in the Mediterranean Sea. Okay, that came over here, developed into a language. There was another branch of language that we like to call as Austric languages. They again came over here before the Aryans came, and the Aryans that traveled from Nordic countries came over here to give us Sanskrit. All right. Now it is said, okay, it is said, this is not me speaking, it's on page number 151, R.C. Majumdar says, in studying certain non-Aryan elements in the Indo-Aryan speech, it is in its different periods, non-Aryan elements which are not Dravidian, okay, Zuliski found that these belonged to Austro-Asiatic speeches as they were current in India. Okay, so the non-Aryan elements, okay, the elements that were not very significant, those were the ones who belonged to the people that were already inhabiting the land of Bharat, that is the Mediterranean people, before coming of the Aryans. All right. Get this, okay, get this. 152, page number 152, chapter number 8, R.C. Majumdar writes, some of the fundamental bases of Indian civilization on the material side would thus appear to be gifts of Austric-speaking Proto-Australoid people. Apparently, since there nobody lived over here, okay, so some of the fundamental bases of the civilization of Bharat on the material side would appear to be the gifts of Austric-speaking Proto-Australoid people. Okay. So since there was nobody living over here, okay, the Proto-Australoids came from the Mediterranean region to teach nobody over here the cultivation of rice, raising of some important vegetables, the manufacture of sugar from the cane, and the use of betel wine in life and in ritual, the habit of counting on the basis of 20, use of turmeric vermilion in religious rituals and social life. So all these things, those people came over here just to teach us. But according to them, nobody existed before they came. So to whom exactly were they teaching this? Weaving of cloth. Okay, apparently we also did not know how to weave cloth. It's only after the Mediterranean people came over here to teach us. Proto-Australoids were the first people to domesticate and train the elephant. Okay, the Mediterranean people, they were the ones, okay. I don't really know if the Mediterranean region has too many elephants. Largely, the elephant as an animal is found in the eastern hemisphere, that is Bharat, then Thailand, and all those countries. But apparently, the Mediterraneans, where elephants are so scarce, they knew how to domesticate it. Hence, they came over here to teach us how to domesticate elephant. Okay. Okay. When Arya and Nishada, the Aryan and the dark-skinned Austric dwellers in the forests, first met in Punjab. Okay. On page number 153, R.C. Majumdar writes, cosmic and creational myths and ideas as they had originated from the pre-Aryan Ostric speaking people of India were adopted into the cosmopolitan or the composite Aryan, non Aryan, or the Hindu religion. Okay. So the cosmic and the creational myths, all the theories that we have about creation of the universe, okay, all the theories that we have about the cosmic existence, okay, nothing, we were not even capable of thinking about them. It was only if after the Aryans came over here and taught us, okay, that these are the things, and hence we adopted that in form of our religion that they like to call as Hindu religion because the Greeks called us Hindus. You see the absurdity of the narrative. Okay. While these made their steady way into the oceanic regions of Pacific through the islands of Indonesia with the expanding proto-Australoids. Apparently, proto-Australoids, Mediterranean people coming over here, they were going further into Indonesia as well. Okay. Now keep in mind, you don't need to, travel all across these places to know what their culture is. Okay. Do you see any cultural similarity between the people of Bharat and the people of the Mediterranean region? This, yeah, according to West, those were the ones who came over here to teach us. Apparently, we were good for nothing. Okay. Even the calendar that we use, okay, the enumeration of the days by the phases of the moon, the tithis, which were early adopted by the Hindu people, probably simultaneously with its formation, and has still been retained in the sacred or religious calendar of the Hindus, is again an ostrich custom which survived in the Polynesia. Okay. The Tithi calendar, the Vikram Samvant and all that thing, not exactly Vikram Samvant, but the calendar, the Tithi calendar based on the phases of the moon that we have, was not really our invention. Okay. People from the Mediterranean region, they devised it, formulated it over there, and came over here to teach us. The bedrock of Indian civilization is agriculture, and that, in all likelihood, in connection with the cultivation of rice, goes back to Austric proto-Australoids of India. We also did not know how to cultivate rice, apparently. People from the Mediterranean, they knew how to cultivate rice, and they came over here to teach us. And people are buying this false narrative. The use of a rude block of stone as a symbol of divinity is also ostrich. Apparently, the idea of idol worship, that we worship a stone as a symbol of divinity, is also not ours. It has come from outside. People from outside came over here and taught us that you can worship a rock. You really have to be a blind person to not realize that this is utter and absolute intellectual dishonesty. Next up, on page number 155, R.C. Majumdar writes, Hevesi believes that there was a prehistoric invasion or immigration into India by Finno-Ugrian or Ugrian and the Ugrian tribes from the Eurasian plains to the south of Ural Mountains. And the Mundas or the Kols with their language resulted from a mixture of these Ugrians with the earlier peoples of the country, the Negritos and the Proto-Australoids. Okay, the Mundas and the Kols, the tribes that we have, perhaps they are the oldest inhabitants of this land. Okay, indigenous inhabitants of this land, but apparently even they weren't, indigenous and original according to the scholarship of the West. They believe that they came from the Ural Mountains and they settled over here. Okay. Now, I'm not blaming R.C. Majumdar to buy into these theories, but the time in which he was writing these books, those were the prevalent theories. Okay, the British and the English and the West had layered up the truth in so many lies, and so through dishonest and insincere scholarships that we would never dig up truth. Okay. Zilinsky has even seen an ostrich substratum in Indo-Iranian. Certain words in like Sanskrit wala, Persian bal, hair, Sanskrit, So there are also some similarities between Sanskrit and the Persian. Okay. So these are the uh, rationales that are given to us when they justify these falsehoods. But even then, it seems that India was the center from which the Austric speech spread into the lands and islands of the East and the Pacific. And the theory that there is actually an Austric family of languages in two groups of Austronesian and Austroasiatic is pronounced by Peter Schmidt, may be said to hold the ground still. Okay, I don't know who this fellow Peter Schmidt is, but according to him, all these languages that had come from the West, Mediterranean and Nordic regions, developed in Bharat and then further spread towards the East. Okay, the masses of agricultural Austrics in the North Indian plains from Afghanistan to eastern Bihar gradually become Aryan speaking roughly between 1500 BC. So I would really urge some scholar from the West, okay, can you point me towards an original primary source that refers to you guys as Aryans in first person? Okay, any populace in the Western countries, any given at all, it should refer to you as Aryans in first person, like we the Aryans, I the Aryan, I the son of an Aryan. If there is, please comment on this video. Okay. Apparently, a name like Ganga is in all likelihood of Austric origin and it appears to have meant just a river. So even the name Ganga that we use for the sacred river, apparently that is also not of an organic origin, it is of an Austric origin. Okay, on page number 157, R.C. Majumdar writes, anthropologists, as noted before, assume at least three varieties or modifications of Mediterranean race as to having come to India, and all of these would appear to have been speakers of Dravidian, at least in India. The Paleo-Mediterraneans, the Mediterranean proper, and the so-called Orientals. Okay, the Dravidian, because Dravid as a word for us is a geographical term that used to signify a direction. Okay, but according to the West, the Dravidian speaking people, Dravidian is a language, according to them, it originated in regions that surround the Mediterranean Sea. Okay. Mainly a village culture based on agriculture, these Dravidian speaking Mediterranean peoples in India were responsible for cities and a city culture, for a real civilization in the true sense of the word, including international trade. Apparently, we also did not know international trade. Okay, it is only after these Dravidian speaking Mediterraneans who came over here, taught us how to live, taught us the way of civilization, taught us the way of international trade, and only after that we were civilized. Okay, these are not my words, these are the words of R.C. Majumdar. Okay, let's go further and read what else he had to say. On page number 158, he says, the want of a solid block of Dravidian speakers or of an Austric speakers in Punjab and Upper Ganges valleys, the fact of the land being inhabited by peoples of these two different language cultures gave to the Aryan speech with its own culture world its greatest opportunity, so that within a few hundred years after the Aryan language had been established in Punjab, it could spread as far as eastern Bihar, ousting the earlier pre-Aryan speeches and gaining greater momentum as its area extended east and south. It's all, fiction. We are not absolutely certain that the city builders of Harappa and Mohenjo-daro in South Punjab and Sindh, whom the Aryans doubtless encountered, spoke Dravidian. Then what was all this about the proto-Australoids and the Mediterraneans coming over here and settling in these regions? On page number 158, R.C. Majumdar says, we are not absolutely certain that the city builders of Harappa and Mohenjo-daro spoke Dravidian. Then who exactly were these Dravidians that you claim came from Mediterranean? If they were the ones, if you're not absolutely sure that they spoke the Dravidian language, something for you to ponder. This matter cannot be proved or disproved until we find a clue to the script in the hundreds of seals found at Harappa and Mohenjo-daro and other sites. So now they conveniently blame that since it cannot be confirmed, okay, it has to be assumed that they spoke Dravidian and hence it came from the Mediterranean. Okay, yeah, you really have to read this to believe, you know. There is no indication from the Rig Veda that the Aryans were conscious of entering a new country when they came to India. I'll read that again. There is no indication, this is on page number 159. I am not saying this. There is no indication from the Rig Veda that the Aryans were conscious of entering a new country when they came to India. So, don't you think if they were traveling from as far as Nordic countries such as Norway, Sweden, and Finland, okay, from all the way to the current day Pakistan, they would not have written a single line about crossing into a different country? Again, an appeal to your reason. Because apparently they knew a highly advanced version of Sanskrit, so language wasn't a problem. Okay. It is also equally likely that the racial and cultural fusion, okay, it is also equally likely that the racial and cultural fusion had commenced between the Aryan and the Dasa Dasyu peoples outside the soil of India itself in Iran in all likelihood. Apparently, people who were already living over here, but again, in the earlier part, it was assumed that there was nobody living here. But before coming of Aryans, there were other races who were living here. They were not very advanced. They needed the Aryans to come over here and tell them, okay, this is how you should live. Okay. But this intermingling, it happened outside of Bharat. That is in Iran. In all likelihood, they are not really certain about it. They are saying it happened in all likelihood. The Vedic speech already shows a number of words which are non-Aryan words with Dravidian affinities and shows, at least in its phonetics, a profound modification on the lines of Dravidian by adopting or developing cerebral sounds which are so distinctive of Dravidian. When the hypothesis of an Aryan invasion and occupation of Bharat was first proposed some 4 generations ago, it was believed that the white-skinned, blue-eyed, golden-haired Aryans, like their kinsmen of northern Europe, entered India from the plateau of Central Asia, which was then a land of romantic mystery, came to this land of the black-skinned non-Aryans, made an easy and matter-of-course conquest of them, imposed upon an inferior race or races their superior religion, culture, and language. Okay, this is what he writes in 159. This is again an hypothesis. So they begin with an assumption, and in the end, the Westerners prove that indeed this assumption was true. Yeah, you really have to read this to realize how funny and ridiculous this is. It was believed that all the better elements in the Hindu religion and culture, its deeper philosophy, its finer literature, its more reasonable organization, everything in fact which was great and good, noble in it, came from the Aryans as a superior white race. Okay, so you have to read this to believe this. Apparently, everything that is good about our civilization, everything that is good about our belief system and faith, that came from the white people. Okay? It could be philosophy, it could be literature, it could be reason. Everything, in fact, that was good and noble has come from the Aryans that came from the Nordic countries. Okay? Guess what everything that was substandard came from? Let's read further, but I think you guessed it right. And whatever was dark and lowly and superstitious in Hindu religion and civilization represented only an expression of the suppressed non-Aryan mentality. Okay, so since what was bad came from the non-Aryan. Okay, now could you see the reason why exactly would the West have did this, or why would the white people in those times would have done this? Okay, to keep you subjugated. Okay, to keep you into this mentality that indeed you are a subjugated race. Okay, that is why I say you cannot trust the intellectual integrity and intellectual integrity of the West. Okay, they have been intellectually dishonest and insincere, at least when it comes to Bharat and its interpretation of its culture and traditions. Okay, so if they would have said, what was the reason of saying that everything good that is there in the native faith of Bharat has come from the West and the white people, and everything bad has come from the dark skinned people? Okay, what was the logical conclusion of this thing? That the racially the whites are superior than the people who lived in Bharat. That was the bedrock of the colonial mentality. That was the core belief of the British when they came over here, that they were a superior race. Okay, again, let's move ahead. From various aspects, a Mediterranean origin of Dravidian people, its religion and civilization appears to find good support. Apparently, the people who live in the south, okay, all the four states of, Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, and Karnataka, all their culture, everything is supposed to have originated in the Mediterranean region. Okay, get this. The cult of Shiva and the institution of yoga appear to have been characteristic of the religious life of the people of Sindh and South Punjab. The Aryans knew of a sky father and of an earth mother, but these divinities were vague nature deities who merely typified the falling of rain from the sky to help earth to produce corn and fruits. Apparently, it took, Aryans, they had to come from those Nordic countries and come over here and tell us, okay, that since it is raining, it is the form of God. Since this is a land, this is the form of a mother. Apparently, we weren't smart enough to realize these things. The Dravidians, this is on page number 160, okay, chapter number 8. The Dravidians appear to have brought to India from their original homeland in the islands of Aegean and the tracts of mainland of the Aegean Sea, Greece and Asia Minor. Okay, they were the one who brought these things over here. Bullshit. Okay, again, on page number 161, R.C. Majumdar writes, it would not perhaps be too much to assume that some at least of the Dravidian speakers of India, who came ultimately from eastern Mediterranean tracts, brought with them one of their national or tribal appellations, Tharmilai, Dramiza, which became transformed into modern name Tamil by the middle of the first millennium AD. Apparently, the Tamil language has come from the Mediterranean Sea region. It is not native, organic, or indigenous to Bharat. I wish what the Dravidian politicians would think of this down south. In South Sindh, the Greeks noted a people called Arabitai. They might very well have been Dravidian speakers in the 4th century BC. So it's all lies upon lies upon lies. You really have to read this to, understand what exactly or what was the thought process. Okay, how do you rationally justify these things? All right. Yep. All right. So next up is no acquaintance with any people beyond the sea except in Ceylon, which was then perhaps accessible on foot at low water. Okay. So Dravidians, no acquaintance with any people beyond the sea. Apparently, the Dravidians, the proto-Australoids who came from the Mediterranean region, they went as far as Tamil Nadu of current day, then they stopped over there. Can you see the absurdity of this argument? People who come from the Mediterranean region, which is, a coastal area, they did not choose to explore the sea further ahead from Tamil Nadu. An appeal to your reason. Okay, if somebody comes from a coastal area, race that has originated in the coastal areas has traveled so far as Tamil Nadu, wouldn't they dare to venture into the sea? It's basic human nature. Okay, again, something for you to think about. All right. Now here is the debate about the method and the mode of worship. Okay. In the earlier days, fire was considered as a messenger between humans and God. Okay. So the pure Aryans who came from the Nordic countries, okay, they did havan in the way that we do it today. Okay. And the dark skinned, okay, the dark skinned people, they worshipped photos with flowers and everything else. So, this, according to R.C. Majumdar and the West, is a distinction that only the Aryans do the Havan and home, and the Dravidians, they worship only the photos through flowers and whatnot. So, apparently, it was only the Aryans who did sacrifice, and the people and the Dravidians, they also do, they don't do such sacrifice and such things. This is R.C. Majumdar saying in his book, not me. I'll read it. It's on page number 162. Okay. The Hindu tradition is vaguely conscious of Hindu religious ideas and philosophy, practices, and ritual, falling under two great categories, Agama and Nigama. Nigama stands for the Vedic, that is the pure Aryan world of ideas. Pure Aryan world. Centering around what has been called the Vedic Karmakand, the practical religion of Vedic inspiration in which Homa or fire sacrifice to the gods of the Vedic world forms the most worthy thing. Agama indicates what may be described as tantric and Puranic form of religion and ritual, and it includes yoga as a special form of mystico-religious ideology and practice. So apparently it was only the havans and the homes were only done in the northern part where only the pure Aryan lived. Okay. In the southern part where the Dravidians lived, only, yoga was practiced and other forms of worship were practiced. Okay. This is something which is quite different from the Vedic rite of Homa, in which a wood fire is lighted on an altar. Certain offerings of food in the shape of meat and fat, butter and milk, cakes of barley and soma or spirituous drink are offered to the gods, who are not at all symbolized by an image, but are supposed to dwell in the sky to receive these offerings through fire. Okay. We did not know these things. Apparently, it was the people from the countries of Norway, Sweden, and Finland. They traveled all the way across over here to do havans and homes. Yeah. Okay. The puja rite. Okay, the puja is the pre-Aryan. In all likelihood, the Dravidian form of worship, while the Homa is the Aryan. And throughout the entire early Vedic literature, the puja ritual with flowers, etc., offered to an image or a symbol is unknown. Okay. Now, think about this. Somebody over here might say that they might have traveled over from the Nordic countries up until the current day Pakistan, and they came over there and to write the Rig Veda. So, there a question might arise over here. Why did they wait so long to write Rig Veda? They could have simply just written it over there. Why come here all the way just to write a book? Now, again, on that note, there is also this theory about oral transmission in our tradition, in the traditions of Bharat, that these things were orally, transmitted. Like Rig Veda, with all certainty, we can say that was written way before it was, actually written down. Okay, it was conceptualized centuries and centuries before it was actually written down. So, again, something for you to think about. This is the West assumptions. This is how the West perceives us. Okay. On page number 164, R.C. Majumdar writes, the popular gods of the Vedic Aryans, Indra, Agni, Varun, Soma, Surya, Usha, Pushan, Parjanya, and the rest gradually recede into the background, and a group of more puissant and more personal gods, more profound and cosmic and more philosophical in their conception, the Puranic gods of Hinduism, headed by the Shiva and Vishnu cult, have been established. As it has been said before, Shiva, no, these things are not. Yeah, so apparently all these forms, Indra, Agni, Varun, Soma, Surya, Usha, Pushan, and Parjanya, all these gods and goddesses were not known to us. Apparently, they had to come from the Nordic countries over here to tell us that these are the gods that you're supposed to worship. Yeah. So it's all a lie, you know. There is no end to this rabbit hole. The deeper you go, the deeper the deeper it goes. The phallic symbol of Shiva, the Shivlinga, the phallic form of symbol of Shiva, the linga appears to be both in its form and name of ostrich and proto-australoid origin. Apparently, the Shivling that we worship, okay, has no origin, has no organic and native origin in Bharat. It came from outside. People from the Mediterranean and the proto-australoid and the ostrich origin, they came over here with the idea of worship of Shivling. We did not know. Yep. And on page number 165, he writes, and assuming that the Mohenjo-daro and Harappa people were Dravidian speakers. Earlier in this book, he mentions that there is no conclusive evidence that the people of Harappa and Mohenjo-daro spoke Dravidian languages. Here he is saying that, okay, we can assume that they spoke Dravidian languages, and on top of that assumption, he is trying to reach an assertion or a conclusion. Let's see. And assuming that the Mohenjo-daro and Harappa people are Dravidian speakers, this would be only another corroboration of the Shiva idea and Shiva legends being of Dravidian origin. Okay, so on top of an assumption, you formulate a claim and then you reach a conclusion. Okay, let's see. What else do we have? Many of our social institutions and conventions, okay, example, certain usages regarding prohibited degrees in marriage and customs, like a wife being on familiar terms with husband's younger brother but regarding his elder brother as her father, and as a good many of our wedding and other customs, okay, are of non-Aryan origin. Apparently, the use of turmeric and vermilion, all these things, we did not know how to use these things. They had somebody came from outside to teach us all those things. Okay, the form of worship that we do, the ablutions, okay, we didn't know these things. People from outside, from Mediterranean and Nordic countries came over here to teach us. Yep. Aryan and on page number 168, okay, Aryan and non-Aryan mentalities and attitudes towards life has given rise consciously as well as unconsciously to a common set of ideals which are actively practiced or are subscribed to by the greater part of Indian humanity. And these ideals are along the following lines: a sense of unity of all life through its being an expression of an unseen reality, a desire to attain to the unseen reality as a solution for all evil, suffering through the ways of knowledge of mystic realization by disciplined faith and devotion, and of disinterested service, a sense of sacredness of all life by passive non-injury, ahimsa, and intellectual pity, karuna, and practical charity and well-doing. Okay, so this is the origin of idea of live and let live. Apparently, the fierce warriors that the Aryans were, they came over here, they plundered, conquered the Dravidians. Who were the Dravidians? Apparently, who came from the Mediterraneans. Who were the Aryans? Who came from the Nordic countries. Both the races came over here, they fought, and suddenly, out of the blue, they realized after so many years of war that we had to live harmoniously, that we should live and let others live. And this is used as a justification for the pacifist attitude of the Bharat nation, that it has always been like this, that we have always lived like this in the form of live and let live. We have always abided by this idea of ahimsa. Yep, this is... You really have to read this. Okay, that brings me to the end of chapter 8. In the next video, we discuss chapter number 9, that is the Indus Valley Civilization. That is all for this episode. Thank you for watching.